the New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.
Hey folks, greetings and welcome along to the New Zealand Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Spain, and great to have Bill Bennett back in the studio. How are you, Bill?
I'm good, Paul. Should be in a sling, but I forgot it.
Yeah, you've been in the wars a little bit. Thanks for making the effort to come out and join me in studio. Maybe a little reminder of where you fit into this big wide world of tech for new listeners.
I'm a journalist. I work for newspapers. I'm a freelance journalist. I work for the newspapers. I do quite a lot of work for the Herald, and I've been writing about technology now since the early 1980s. If I'm not writing about technology, I'm writing about business. So I tend to focus more on the area where those two cross over.
Yeah. That's good. And of course, folks can go to billbennett.co.nz to see some of the content that you put up kind of outside of those media outlets from time to time as well, right?
Yeah, it's mainly a weekly newsletter. Newsletter goes out every Friday now, and that's the main focus. But occasionally, there's other things as well.
Yeah, good. Before we jump in, of course, a big thank you to our show partners, 1NZ, Spark, 2 Degrees Workday, and Gorilla Technology. Really appreciative of their support. Now, let's jump in. We've got some things on a New Zealand perspective, some more global topics, and we're also running our survey and giveaway contest. So I'm just looking for the notes for that, and I'll share those details shortly. So we'll come back on that. But yeah, some local news, international, our giveaway, some freebies from some of the tech companies, and also we're going to talk a little bit, being the time of year that it is, around some Christmas tech gifts. So. Some of the things we've been looking at this year that might be of interest and worth thinking about to give to somebody, or maybe give to yourself, as often happens at this time of year. Now, delving in on the New Zealand news, I saw an email come through from Apple around their App Store Awards, which is something that they do each year. And I was kind of thinking, what's going to be in here? Didn't really expect much of kind of relevance from a particularly New Zealand perspective. But it turned out that in the list we have 2 New Zealand apps that got global recognition in Apple's App Store Awards for this year, and in fact, drilling in further, I think they were both from Christchurch. Yeah. So the first one I came across was the Vision Pro App of the Year, which of course the Vision Pro isn't even sold in New Zealand, but we have a photographer and filmmaker based out of Christchurch who's been getting this incredible immersive 3D content of travel experiences around the world, incredible scenery and locations, and wrapped that up in an app called Explore POV. And as part of that, he's been whisked off to Apple HQ and all the rest of it, and it was just like, wow, that was not something I would have expected, but there we go.
2 reasons I wouldn't expect it. First is Vision Pro's there's not exactly a lot of content for that product, and that's where it's been struggling. I mean, and that's with anything that's 3D, immersive, multiverse. It's no accident, by the way, that this week Facebook, or rather Meta, who changed the name to for the metaverse business, finally admitted that they've given up on the metaverse. So all that business of changing the name and everything was obviously a waste of time. But anyway, getting back to this one, Apple's, if you like, I don't really like the term metaverse, but their sort of spatial, three-dimensional, immersive product, Vision Pro. It's interesting that someone in New Zealand's done that, because I would imagine that you need quite a lot of resources. One of the problems with content for those devices is that it's actually very expensive to produce. It's why, for example, 3D movies are not much bigger than they never really took off, because it actually requires a lot of resources and a lot of work to put that extra dimension stuff in. So hats off to a company in Christchurch which actually had the technology to be able to put that together.
Yeah, well, I think what I read from looking at his website, and maybe it was some other media sources as well. The Herald sort of have certainly reported on it, but I think it was I discovered it sort of when the after this email came through, was he's an individual. He's been traveling. He initially I think developed it himself, the initial app, and then got some help, but the big work has been very much around the content. But he's ended up with a camera that is specifically for getting 3D. So it's got the dual lens, so you're able to capture in 3D, which I think comes in around 50K. So this is not a small investment,
and you probably need some processing power to put it together as well.
And although the Macs these days are pretty good, with the M series chips, if you're on an M4 or an M5 based MacBook, you've actually got a reasonable amount of power to deal with these things. But obviously a reflection of sort of the creativity that often sort of comes from Kiwis, and throwing himself out there and building this app that
I think that's the point, Paul, is that I think that because we're still, despite everything, we're still a bit on the edge of the world in some ways, and it's the place where people are going to experiment with these things. So hats off to him. I'm actually really quite impressed by that. And the other winner, the fishing adventure, which is on a iPad, sold 2.5 million sales, which is very good, and obviously made a fair chunk of change for Apple in the process as well. There was an article around, and James Hustler's got a website at jameshustler.com. But on there was a story around their app hitting 10,000 Vision Pro downloads and being featured by Apple, and this was May last year. So we'll have no doubt picked up steam from there. But it's really interesting looking at his social media and looking at some of the content that he's put together, the different areas that he works on. So I think full credit to both Black Salt Games with Dredge for their iPad Game of the Year, and incredible to see that level of pick up the 2.5 million sales. And the other thing is, of course, is we should probably just mention is that how the App Store, for all the people that are critical of it, one thing it does do is it enables the smaller players to get in front of an audience, which in the past would have been really hard to launch those games into the stores around the world and so on. So it's actually something where it puts us more on a level playing field.
Look, I mean, we like to beat up the big tech companies for taking their slice on these sorts of things, but there's definitely a bunch of positives, and I guess we have seen the world change a little bit, where in more ways now you can get apps, especially if you're in Europe, Most people appear to be sort of sticking to the mainstream app stores, and there's definitely some benefits there. Also on the New Zealand front, we've moved into this world of open banking. That's now, I guess we've hit the date this month, and that's now officially mandated in New Zealand. And I guess we've been through different areas of, say, telecommunications, where, it ultimately got mandated that there had to be number portability. And, it used to be if you had your 025 number and then, and so on, or your 021 number, those numbers, that would tell you what network you're on, and you couldn't move your number around. You wanted to change network, you had to change your phone number, right?
It's regulating for competition, which is basically what part of the Commerce Commission's job, in fact. And it needed to happen because just as the two big mobile companies dragged their feet over mobile termination rates, 15 years ago now, 10 years ago, the big banks have been dragging their feet on open banking. It's going to open up competition for them if it comes in. And that's exactly what's happened in the UK. The UK moved to open banking, I was going to say a decade ago, but it's not quite that long ago. It's about 8 years ago. And what happened was instantly there were things like apps would appear so that all your different accounts could appear on the one app. And you could do transactions, and you didn't have the same big banks clipping the ticket every time you did a transaction. It was, the ticket clip was smaller and so on. And it's been relatively successful. It's not perhaps used quite as much as people might have expected, but it's still very popular, and it has changed things quite significantly in the UK. I think it's going to happen here quite fast. I think it'll probably happen here faster because it's happened there already. That we've learned some lessons from what happened there.
There's been a bit of momentum here. A bunch of companies that have sort of been working in the area that have been anticipating this legislation becoming active. Of course there are examples out of the UK. Monzo was probably the big neobank that has become very, very well known now. Out of the UK was kind of the first cab off the rack. We've had a bunch of these newer digital entities that are not quite banks yet, the likes of Emerge and so on across the show over recent years. And with this legislation now being in place, I think we will see some really interesting innovations come through. One of the examples, I guess, has been, hey, you can have one app, be it Sharesies or another bank app, one of these new startups, and you could potentially do all your banking through that app because they'll be able to pull in all the data, right?
I was going to specifically mention Sharesies because that's a really important thing because I'm a freelancer, I work for myself, so my money comes in dribs and drabs. I don't get a salary payment every month, and sometimes I want to invest some of the money. If I want to put some of it into my Sharesies account, it might take hours. So the money arrives in my banking account. It might take hours for me to be able to make a transaction. Now, I'm not a day trader. I'm not sort of like speculative, but you might see something. You might see on Sharesies, oh, that's a good price. Spark's trading at a good price, or Infratel or whatever. Let's buy some. And by the time your bank's handed over the money and what have you, the price has changed and everyone else has jumped in, and so all that stuff will become hopefully much more seamless. And that's where I think the power of it is that it enables you to move money between the different, your different pots of money. They don't have to live in like silos anymore. And so for things like investing, it becomes, just a lot more convenient and easy to do.
Yeah, and you could see in some ways this also being a forerunner as we get more and more digitized as sort of society, that in the future it's able to tap into a central bank digital currency and, all these sorts of things where the lines are blurred around, well, is that real money? Is that digital money? Is it this? Is it that? And creating whatever front end, ultimately wins. And it's not necessarily a winner takes all. We want to see that competition, and there could be multiple players. But Sharesies have done incredibly well on that investment side, and have recently been offering a debit card with rebates, and we've talked to other companies, the likes of Debut and Emerge and so on. So it's going to be really fascinating to see how all that comes together when you can effectively kind of completely control your bank. You can get access on a data perspective, but also via APIs.
One of the
control
other things that
right?
I think was popular, I was talking to someone about this in the UK not so long ago, and they were saying one of the things that's really important is, if you think back to when Xero started, there was a thing called Xero Personal, which meant you could manage all your personal money finances in one place.
Yep.
There's nothing like that anymore.
Not from Xero.
No, not from Xero. But there are things like that from
Smith, I think, is
and things
one
like
of the competitors,
and things like Intuit have something like that as well. But the thing is in the UK, that service is now done by one of your finance companies that you deal with. So your bank might, for example, offer that service. So if you're banking with some UK banks, you might have your shares and your other investments drawn into just one central place where you can manage everything. Well, that just makes so much more sense to be able to do that, and you don't need an external app when you've got when you can do it through your banking dashboard. And the other thing, of course, that happened in the UK is that basically the banks have to lift their game to compete, so they have to get into this to a degree as well.
The other area that's had some attention to do with the open banking has been to do with API fees, and there's been a chunk of debate around this. And it's kind of fascinating to catch sort of the different sides of the debate. On one side, you've got the banks who are saying, look, we'll it's reasonable. We should be able to charge something for accessing our APIs. I think Xero recently have started charging software developers who use their APIs and build apps that tap into Xero in a new way. They've recently announced a new fee structure, but ultimately a debate around, well, what's a reasonable amount to charge for API access, and exactly how do you do that? So the initial draft legislation was talking about banks being able to charge up to $5 a month for consumers to access their own data. And I think what we've now seen is that banks aren't allowed to charge for that. I think that's where we've landed, or at least there's.
Well, that's back to the mobile termination rates with the mobile phones. When that changed, when that was regulated, which in effect the regulation stopped them. I mean, it didn't. It reduced them to tiny amounts, but that changed the mobile market dramatically. And after that happened, we started getting all those more innovative plans. The things like all-you-can-eat plans and so on. It meant that 2 Degrees was able to grow and compete, and the market and prices literally dropped overnight. Within like a year or so of that happening, the price of using a mobile phone came down. Same thing should happen in banking, right? Banking is quite expensive in New Zealand.
Yes. So so it's interesting how that's landed. Certainly at this initial point that we're not expecting to see any fees, and we'll see how that ultimately evolves over time. But I think great to be across the line on that. Also on the banking side, this one it hasn't had a lot of discussion, and it did spark a bit of interest, and somebody shared it with me, and I ended up talking with Jack Tame about this on News Talk ZB the other day. Is that our banks have put in place some mandatory kind of behavioural surveillance on those that use their apps. Now, my understanding is this covers ANZ, BNZ, and Westpac. I don't think ASB at this point. And what it effectively does is it's looking at things that help identify that you're the right user on the device. So from many perspectives, this makes a lot of sense. How quickly you type, how you swipe, how you hold your phone, even the apps that are installed, I think, on Android devices. And then they take that information. I think they're using a third-party, entity to gives them that capability and then does the analysis. But the flip side to the reality that this might help identify, hey, the person using this device or that's installed the app and logged in as, say, Paul or Bill, their behavior is not what we would normally expect. And so you might be able to stop some fraud. But then other people are saying, well, if this is kind of a form of behavioral biometrics and that ends up in a cloud somewhere, then that can get lost.
Yeah.
And so there's kind of two sides to this picture, whether that's actually an appropriate thing for banks to do or not.
It sounds a bit like fingerprinting, doesn't it?
Yeah,
in some ways.
Yeah.
I thought where you were going with that was, you're acting a bit slow making that transaction. That's because you're on the fourth pint of beer or whatever.
Yeah.
and you're not going to have any more because we decided you can't. I thought,
it won't let you do the transaction.
Yeah. But look, I think we do need to make sure there are safeguards around how that data is used, and we do need safeguards about where that data is stored and so on. I mean, I wouldn't be too uncomfortable if the banks are all Australian owned. I wouldn't be too uncomfortable if the data was being stored in Australia. I would be quite concerned if it was being stored in America somewhere or Belarus.
Yeah, well, I think what we've learned in the past is that you want to keep sort of biometric data as close as possible.
Yeah.
Like, I'm really comfortable about having my biometrics stored, encrypted on a chip and on my phone, but it never going to the cloud. And look, I could be proven wrong at some point, and hackers may work out some way to compromise that. But it seems at the lower risk end. But when you take sort of biometric or similar type of data and you put it in the cloud, well, at some stage that's probably going to get hacked in some form, or certainly there's a reasonable risk of that. And we've seen it happen in the past.
There's been episodes that with voice recognition, recognizing your voice and so on. Yeah.
So there are some concerns. So I think, this is an interesting one to follow. When I researched it, what I noticed was Westpac were up front around coming out with this or utilizing this type of capability about 2 years ago. So it's not actually new, but it has been picked up recently. So interested if listeners have got thoughts to share on this sort of topic, because I kind of look at it from both perspectives. Well, it keeps us safer. I think that the reason why it's maybe getting attention now is maybe either banks have had the capability and not fully turned it on, or they've ratcheted it up, or we've got new banks that have entered with it. And part of that being is there's now this need for banks to repay customers in certain fraud situations.
Yeah.
So they're looking at, well, okay, how do we dial down the risk, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's us from a New Zealand perspective. A couple of things on the international, and this one crosses very much into New Zealand as well. The supply of memory, the supply of RAM for our computers. this has become a challenge with just how much need for, well, it's not just RAM, but RAM and processors and computing power is being taken up by AI data centers. And we've now got to a point where RAM prices, I mean, this has been coming up over probably, a period of months, but now it's kind of got to the point where probably in the last couple of weeks where it just seems to be sort of,
it's hit a tipping point.
Really going crazy, these memory prices, sometimes 3 times the normal price.
Here's the thing, Paul. The thing about AI, which is, for a long time we've heard stories about how the AI requires processing power, lots of processing power, but it probably, if anything, memory requirement is even greater. And it's and the way that it uses memory is very memory intensive applications, and basically they've sucked up the world's supply of memory into those companies. And just as there's fears about we need to build new power stations, we need to develop new sources of fresh water and so on to fuel the AI boom, we're going to be paying a lot more for our computers and everything because of the AI boom sucking up all the memory chips in the world. And the appetite for this is insatiable. At some point, that has to stop. At some point, I mean, we've heard lots of talk about the fact there's an AI bubble, and it seems pretty obvious there's some kind of bubble going on. And I've seen these trends, these bubble-like trends in the industry over the years come and go. I mean, I've been writing about technology for 40 years, and I've definitely seen 3 or 4 similar bubbles happening in the same way.
Yep.
And they burst eventually. But here's the thing that I've learned over these various surges of activity like AI at the moment is, generally speaking, only 1, 2, 3, at most 4 companies end up making all the money or the lion's share of the money. So if you think, for example, of the mobile phone sector, there's pretty much 2 companies that make all the money from mobile phones. I mean, there are some smaller ones, but basically it's Apple and Samsung, and it's clear blue sky between them and the rest in terms of making profit. Cloud's the same. There's 3 companies that dominate cloud. I think between Amazon, Microsoft, and Google, that's 67% of the world's cloud. And what happens is once we go past a certain threshold, it just collapses into this small number of companies. So I'm saying here today, this is my sort of prediction of the moment, is that at some point the AI sector is going to collapse into a small number of companies that will have all of it, or not necessarily 100% of it, but but like the 3 big cloud companies are now 2/3 of the world, the entire world's supply of cloud computing. And same thing's going to happen with AI, that it's going to collapse into 3, maybe there'll be a 4th one, but there won't be lots and lots of AI companies. If you look at the market today, there's probably about 12 companies that are shooting for one of those positions. Well, they're not all going to make it. And when that happens, suddenly it's probably going to happen when I say sudden, I don't mean it's going to happen on Monday and it's all happened by the end of the week, but it's going to happen very, very quickly, over the course of, say, a year or so, that it'll consolidate very fast. And suddenly there'll be all the RAM you need, because there's only, so many companies still buying it. And a lot of that investment just gone into those other companies, that will get snapped up by the surviving players anyway. So I think it's very temporary, and I think it's a sign. I think it's actually yet another indicator that there's something's probably going to snap quite soon.
Yeah, I'm really fascinated to watch how it plays out, because other people are saying, "Oh, this is going on for years." You've got things in the background with some new technologies kind of coming through that seems to be more efficient ways of running AI. That's something that could dial down.
Chinese are good at that too.
The usage, right? So there's always a bunch of factors at at play, as well as, you know, as you highlight, sort of the, you know, commercial realities and that scenario where the market does, you know, ultimately sort of, you know, consolidate. But I'm not sure, you know, did an interview for one of the TV stations a couple of weeks back, and you know, they were talking around the AI bubble. Maybe it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, and you know, that was kind of, I guess, a big story there for you know, for a week or two, and it you know, it's still being discussed. But I guess my point was that we haven't. I don't think we've reached, you know, peak AI from a usage perspective, because there's a lot of scenarios sort of still ahead, and so therefore, you know, how that kind of plays out. Usage versus share prices versus, you know, memory requirements and so on. I'm probably not as clear as you on you know, one of the how it actually plays out.
Yeah, there's one of the facts you didn't mention, right? And that is it looks as if none of the players are actually making a profit from it at the moment, right? So they're all, and it's, if you think back to when Uber started, right? Uber had this like huge part. I think it had 50 billion in investment capital, and it used that money to buy market share in effect. And what you've got now, you've got these 10, 12 companies that are using huge piles of capital to buy market share. And there's not enough market share. You know, there's not enough for all those investors to get their money back. There just isn't. There just isn't that there. And they're not making their. They're not all making a profit. They're profits are probably not there anyway at the moment, but they will be when it consolidates. When it consolidates down to, you know, 3 players or 4 players, then suddenly those players will scoop up all the business. You can probably expect the cost of using AI to increase as well at that time, but it will possibly be profitable at that point. But that's the crunch thing, is that you can't keep pouring money into things that doesn't show a payoff in some point in the future. Some point, investors are going to think, well, hang on, this you know, second division AI company which we're pouring money into, we're never going to get it back. And if that sounds crazy, right? What used to be called Facebook poured 77 billion into the metaverse. Are you using the metaverse? You know, is the metaverse still even a thing? Because you don't hear of it suddenly, and they spent 77 billion. So that tells you that there is a kind of madness about this. I mean, Facebook has the cash flow to do that, but I don't think 12 companies have the cash flow to do something similar to AI.
There's only so far, isn't there, on these things. Great point. And lastly, on the news front, India has moved to an interesting, you know, place when we look around the world. They have been really digitizing pretty fast as a nation, which is quite fascinating to kind of look at, I guess, from a case study standpoint. But the newest news on that, so they've kind of mandated a digital ID system, and then the latest is that they're asking smartphone manufacturers to put a state-run cyber safety app on new devices. So apparently, whether it's a Apple or an Android device, within 90 days, they've got to ensure all the new devices come with the government's app, Sanchar Sathi. I've probably not pronounced that correctly. And they've got to put that on, and with the functionality not being able to be disabled or restricted. Now, I'm sure there'll be a whole lot of benefits you get from, having your app, maybe from some perspectives, but there will always be people that are uncomfortable about saying the government having an app on their device. And when you look at the likes. I think this sort of thing has been mandated in probably Russia, and China, right? So when you kind of look at it from that perspective, you've got a whole Big Brother kind of play coming in here, haven't you?
It's absolutely that. And look, there's two things about it. First is, yes, there's something similar in China, and it is used for surveillance, and it is used to monitor what you're saying on social media, and it is used for all those purposes. And there is a sort of scary Big Brother side to it. But the other thing is that generally speaking, when authoritarian measures come in to the world, they're always cloaked in personal safety, security and safety and so on. That's always the language which is used to let it slip under the radar, because this will make your children safe. This will make you safe.
Like the speed cameras have become now called safety cameras.
And the fact that we've got police with truncheons on every corner, that makes your children safe. There's an element of that. So that's the politics of it, and that disturbs me. But what really disturbs me about it is there's just a sort of tendency around the world in I should say Russia and China, India now, maybe the US in the future, where the governments are starting to get more involved in what people are doing, and watching more. And even if there's nothing in this at the moment, you can bet your bottom dollar, right, that this is the back door that any kind of state security in India could use to monitor what people are up to.
Well, this sounds like sort of a next level on the stuff that's Edward Snowden revealed about what the US were up to a decade or so back. I see the BBC's reporting on it highlights. They make the statement: under the app's privacy policy, it can make and manage phone calls, send messages, access call and message logs, photos and files, as well as the phone's camera. And then they had a statement from Internet Freedom Foundation, whose comment was, in plain term, this converts every smartphone sold in India into a vessel for state-mandated software that the user cannot meaningfully refuse, control, or remove. So, this does seem like a pretty big deal, but it is part of this kind of broader digitization of everything. And I think it's something kind of, as a society, we have to really get our heads around, is how much is too much digitization, and how appropriate is it to sort of be mandating the digitization of everything? Because even in India, there are people that don't have access to a digital ID, or don't have access to a phone, or don't want to use a phone, or et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I'm just going to put another idea out there, right? And that is that China is relatively homogenous as a culture and as a nation, right? Russia is relatively homogenous. The people all speak Russian and so on. India's got like 100 and something languages. It's got different religions, different ethnicities, and so on. And the various, what some of those groups are going to be worried about is that it's all controlled by whoever is is in charge, and that it's probably not good if you're in one of those minorities there.
It's an interesting point. Certainly, if we've got any listeners that have got comments to make on this, particularly if this is something that impacts you or your family in some way, I'd be quite fascinated to hear how comfortable people feel about it. And I know, like, governments come and go, but one thing governments do like to have is control over the populace to varying levels,
and it never comes off, does it? Those speed cameras never came out when the next government came into New Zealand, for example.
It usually increases rather than disappearing. So it is fascinating. I think some people see this as kind of a kind of something where there's there's never any turning back of the clock, which, as you highlight, is usually the case, and maybe see this kind of, as something that is extremely dangerous. Now, I guess, my hope is where we see these sort of technologies implemented, we work out, well, what are the right ways to do it? And that might be you make it optional rather than mandating it. It might be that you ensure that there are ways that people can operate without it, because it's very easy to say, oh, well, this is entirely optional, as the UK did with their digital IDs. They said they're entirely optional, and then very soon thereafter it was, oh, but if you own a business, then you need to use the government digital ID.
And opting out becomes harder and harder and harder. And look, here's the thing. In New Zealand, we quite often talk about the digital divide, about how there's people that don't have access to, for example, telehealth. If you're in a rural area, you might want to be able to do a telecall. You want to get government services and so on. At some point, they're going to at some point, a government like the Indian government might mandate that everyone has a phone as well as this app. It's not an impossibility that you need to have this before you can function in society. You might not be able to you may not be able to do banking without a phone and this app, for example. So it's kind of disturbing, and I don't know enough about Indian politics to know where that sort of goes from here. But I get the impression that it's. I know that India is the world's largest democracy, for example, but I don't know. I think they've got a quite hard man government at the moment. So
that's my understanding. And look, even if this sort of thing were to come in New Zealand, where we've always been pretty well. I wouldn't say everybody's always happy with the government. We're never happy with the government, but it's not like we've been at sort of the extremes of some countries. But I think
we're relatively freewheeling.
There's a level of, well, we do need to we even need to balance these sorts of things and create an environment where people have choice. And I've heard from people that are totally freaked out by digital ID, by central bank digital currencies, and this exact sort of thing. Now,
Paul, do you remember the vaccine pass?
Yeah. Well, that's right. During COVID, there were different people in different camps, and as society, we need to be able to have room to kind of accommodate for different people having different comfort levels with varying things, and that we create an environment that's kind of good for all. And sometimes surveillance can maybe be too much, and sometimes the use of tech can be too much. Now I'm pretty undecided on a lot of these topics as to what the right way about them is. I think probably things like digital ID and these other topics, things I've mentioned, we're probably going to get all of these technologies because there's a lot of sense to doing so. But it's more around how do we navigate them so that you land in a place that you get the maximum of the good benefits, and you minimize the sort of things that would freak people out from a surveillance type of perspective.
Well, I think it's probably. I think the news from India is basically it's a call to at least start thinking about what we want from that aspect of our society.
Yeah. All right. We'll pick this up again, I'm sure, in future things. But yeah, it's certainly that was really interesting to see India make that move. I think that they are probably at the an end of things, which is going to be really interesting to watch from a distance, because of the scale of the population, because their government probably is a little bit edgier than most democracies, because they're doing it and we're not at this point, so we can learn some things.
And they do. There's a lot of minorities in India. I know that much.
All right, that's through the news. Now, wanted to tap into a couple of other topics, some of the gadgets we've been looking at recently. This time of year, we've been prepping a kind of a Christmas sort of tech gifts guide that will be up on the NZ Tech Podcast website. at nztechpodcast.com/Christmas, I believe. So that will be kind of some sort of, I guess, my list of kind of recommended things to consider when you're looking at tech gifts, whether that's for yourself or for others. And so we'll chat around some of those. The other thing, as part of that, has been looking at some of the newer gadgets and thinking, well, are they relevant to be part of this tech gifts list? And some of the other things are I guess things that I've been using this year, and think, hey, that's definitely something to recommend. On the newest gadgets, earlier on in the year, we had a little bit of a look at some of Motorola's newer smartphones. They've come through and done a refresh over recent months. So wanted to have a look at sort of those new handsets. The three that we've just looked at recently, Motorola Razr 60. And some might recall that I looked at the Motorola 50 Pro, Motorola Razr 50 Pro earlier on in the year. Now, this it's quite interesting to just to get my head around, because I hadn't really delved into what Motorola were doing on their handsets in current times. And what it seems is that each year they're launching two of these foldable phones, although we've just got the one launched in New Zealand officially. So last year they had the Motorola Razr 50 and the Motorola Razr 50, Ultra, not Pro, Motorola Razr 50 Ultra. Now, what they appear to have largely done, if you want to simplify it, is now it's now we've got the newest editions out, and the difference between their Razr 50 or the Razr, the last one, the Razr 50 Ultra, and the new Razr 60 is virtually nothing.
Yeah.
So what was a $2,000 phone called the Razr 50 Ultra, earlier on in the year and last year, there's a few adjustments, but it looks pretty small, has now become this year's Motorola Razr 60, and and a third of the price basically knocked off as a new model. And then if you want the top features, they've got a Motorola Razr 60 Ultra, which at this point they haven't launched into the New Zealand market. So that was just me getting my head around how they work.
Well, like I said earlier about how the mobile phone market is really two companies. There's a third one. Oppo is probably the other significant player. After those companies, no one's really making a lot of money. I mean, and I doubt that Motorola is actually part of Lenovo as well. So it's
that's right. Yeah,
it's worth mentioning. The golden age of mobile phone innovation and competition has passed, right? I'm not saying they're rubbish or anything. I'm just saying that the golden age is over. Modern phones are great in lots of ways, and they're better than the old ones and so on. But what you don't get these days is you don't really get anything sort of exciting coming from left field, and some of the exciting things that came from left field in the past were pretty daft and didn't really work out. I mean, do you remember there was the modular phones, for example, for a bit? And so it just that kind of stage is behind us. And I suppose where I'm going with this is it's hard to know what Motorola's game is really, because it's not going to be a particularly profitable business for them. I mean, I'm not saying they can't make a profit, but it's not going to be particularly profitable. So what are they doing? Are they hoping that to carve out some niche in the market and perhaps increase their share over the years against the Apples and the Samsungs and the Oppos? I don't know. It's a hard one to figure out what they're actually what they're about, what they're actually up to.
Well, I mean, I guess for me, I think it's really important that we end up with with competition in a market. And Motorola, obviously a brand that's been around for a long time, as you say, now part of Lenovo. So they've got that that Chinese ownership and R&D and so on. The hardware they're releasing is really nice, and I mentioned there were 3. There's the other 2 I looked at are the Motorola Edge 60 Fusion, which is a kind of a higher mid-tier phone, retailing around $700. Really nice design. It's kind of got the curved edges that the top end Samsungs used to have, and then they've got their Edge 60 Pro, which I guess is designed to compete against the S series from Samsung. Now I think
how much are they, Paul?
That's about $1,300 as the retail price.
So Motorola prices top out about $1,300.
Well, if you're looking at their Razr 60, that's about $1,200.
Yeah.
But the 50 Pro, and I guess if they do launch the 50 Ultra, and if they were to launch the 60 Ultra here, that would be at that sort of $2,000 price point. But that they don't seem to have continued at those price points in this market, which makes sense to me.
So that's what appears to be happening, isn't it? They're coming down the market in terms of the price. Yeah.
And then they've got they've got other lower end models. So I think what they do is they give a bit of competition, some other options in the market. The hardware, I think you're arguably getting better bang for your buck than you would be with a Samsung. The big concern that I have, and maybe this is a market sort of scale thing, is they're behind on software updates.
Yeah.
And to me, if you're not delivering consistent fast software updates, as well as committing to a longevity of software updates, then that really dents my confidence in the brand.
And the other thing I think is that if you're spending $2,000 on a phone, right, you know exactly where you are with a Samsung or an Apple. You know precisely what you're going to get. You've had it before. You've been there. You had it before. They're asking for quite a leap of faith to go and spend $2,000 on a phone from a brand which you may have distant memory of.
Yeah.
But that's asking people to take quite a leap of faith. And I think Oppo do that, operate in that space really well. They're brave and they're successful at it. I don't think there's room for another player to do that. I just don't. And I'm quite conscious that I think it may have been with you on the podcast. We talked a few years ago about the Nokia phones. Do you remember there was a wave of Nokia phones coming back into market?
Yeah.
They came, they were around for a little bit, and they just faded away again. I think I could be wrong. There could be a market waiting for Motorola phones, but I can't see it.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, I certainly hope that
I like the competition. By the way,
these other brands can keep competing.
Yeah, no, I think we need
and
that.
and keep winning market share. But my concern would be without that commitment to the software updates that we're seeing Samsung deliver on from a security updates perspective, as well as a actual Android new versions commitment and a pace to the ones that they do commit to. Your device 2 or 3 years down the track, whether you hand it on to someone else or you like to use it for sort of 5 to 7 years, you basically it gets to a point where it's going to be insecure. It's going to be missing out on those,
and that's going to happen quite
versions.
quickly, I would imagine.
So that's the challenge.
I look, my feeling is that if you're going to be an effective competitor in the phone market, you need to have something fresh, something new that is the other, and I think phones have evolved between the folding phones and the models like the high-end Apples and so on.
Yeah.
They've kind of evolved to their end point. There's not really another iteration of evolution from there. So it needs something radical to come from left field. I think if you had something radical coming from left field, you might just get away with it. But they're a bit Me Too-ish, you know.
Interesting. Yeah. Yep. No, I hear what you're saying. All right. Well, for those that are kind of curious around the Motorola, we are giving away a Motorola Edge 60 Fusion with our listener survey. So we've got a bunch of prizes in there, which you can find if you go to nztechpodcast.com/survey. I may have mentioned this previously, but most listeners don't get around to entering. So, you know, it's one of those draws. You've got a much better chance of winning something than you have with Lotto. So, and it helps us if you fill out the survey and share some feedback, you know, on your listening experience and any advice as we think about you know, changes for NZ Tech Podcast for the year ahead. You'll find all those details up there at nztechpodcast.com/survey. And there's also some other gadgets in the mix as well. So yeah, well worth doing. I might say. So now, yeah, I mentioned a bit of a Christmas sort of tech gifts. Top of the list actually for me is the new Rocket Lab book. That's about a $75 odd dollar purchase or less depending on where you get it from. But yeah, really enjoyed reading it, and pretty inspiring to you know, read around what Peter Beck and the Rocket Lab team have achieved, you know, both here in New Zealand and in the US. So that's old school, but being a book, but yeah, a pretty nice thing to have around, and it's likely probably to last longer than most $70 gadgets that you might buy. And also in there, something else I've found is pretty useful is the sort of the I guess the newest iterations of earbuds. In my case, this year, I've been using the Apple AirPods Pro 3 from the perspective of the noise cancellation and just the overall kind of audio quality. Now that's a bit more of an expensive buy, especially the, you know, Apple's iteration. I think retail here is $479, but taking those on a few flights and just the way that it cuts out fabulous. All the noise.
Yeah, no, it's great. And my endorsement of the AirPods is I have a lawn mowing contractor who comes around at 7 a.m. about once a fortnight, and if I've got the AirPods on and I'm watching, you know, perhaps watching some Premier League football from the UK, or listening to a podcast, or listening to broadcast radio at 7 a.m. while I'm making the coffee and tea and so on, I don't even know if the contractor's been. It's that good.
Yeah, and I've noticed that, and yeah, similar sort of scenarios on a flight, etc. Yeah. There's the one scenario where you've just got them in, and they're doing the, you know, the noise cancelling. They bring down the kind of, you know, the noise. But if you hit play or you watch something, you know, whatever, you know, you're listening or watching something, then that plus the cancellation bit means, yeah, you've got no idea about whatever the annoying sound is.
My last long distance flight, I slept for about 8 hours because of having the noise cancelling.
Right, you just have to run a bit of gaffer tape around your head to keep them in your ears. But actually, I do find that they stay in pretty well now. You've got the different size tips.
The secret for AirPods is to make sure you get the right fitting. You actually have to work at that.
It definitely makes a difference, and I know they've got 4 size kind of, you know, ear tip things that you know, put on them to make so you can get the ones that sort of fit the best.
And also, but the other thing I found, right, is over time, they might get a bit loose, so you might want to change the size after, if you've been using them for say 9 months or so.
Okay, good tip. We will talk through some of the other gadgets that I've been looking through recently, and we'll recommend We won't squeeze that in today, but been looking at some of the newest smart lights from Philips Hue and Wiz. Been having a look at Dyson's PencilVac, so the sort of miniaturization of the vacuum cleaner. Actually, I'll give that one a mention because that we've been playing around with that over the last 24 hours since that arrived. And when I saw it, I thought, well, why? The Dyson vacuums are already sort of small as it is. Why would you want something smaller? But this thing, it sort of feels like it. I don't know. It floats when you kind of push it around the floor. I guess it's to do with the rollers spinning and whatnot. But it's very cool, but it's also $1,049. So this is kind of where it's like, okay, that's amazing miniaturization that they've squeezed a tiny motor basically inside the rod of the vacuum cleaner, which is, I guess, why they call it the PencilVac.
And the batteries in as well is quite impressive.
Yeah, it all squeezes in there. It's got a really nice stand. You actually link it up to your phone. I think that so it can send you reminders if you don't empty it, because being that slim, there's not a lot of storage, and the recommendation is you empty it after each use.
Or you get the state-owned phone app. Paul Spain, you haven't cleaned your house today.
Yeah, I guess it could do that as well. The sort of different commentary I've seen on it is, hey, because a couple of things. It's designed for hard floors. I've tried it around the office on the carpet tiles. It works totally fine on those. But it has got less suction than what Dyson are known for. So I'm not sure for most people that this would be a replacement. Like their other vacuum, their cordless ones are a replacement for generally any other vacuum cleaner, unless you've got a robot vacuum cleaner. It seems like the sweet spot for this is maybe those that have got a robotic vacuum cleaner doing most of the cleaning, and they want something for the other bits and pieces.
We've got a robot, a stick, and a conventional one.
Right. Okay. There you go.
We bought them at different times.
Yeah.
Look, I mentioned to Paul before we started the broadcast that one of the problems with Dyson, the Dyson stuff's good, by the way, but one of the things is that usually about 9 months to a year after the new Dyson product, you can go on Alibaba and find the clone versions. Some of those clones are good. Some of them are trash, actually. But it does seem to be that Dyson's got a lot of fast followers in terms of the technology. They're very fast followers. I would imagine that someone in, some province in China is pulling that apart already in their company labs. And can we get the price of this down to $120? It's probably the instruction.
Yeah. Look, I mean, they've got a bit of a halo as a brand, a bit like Apple and others. They are known for innovating and doing things a little bit differently. I was chatting with someone recently on why we haven't seen Dyson say dominate on the robot vacuums, and we've been into a bit of a discussion on that, and part of that being that they like to really differentiate and do things really different to everyone else. But this is one of those examples of a product that we don't see in the market. I'm sure there will be people, brands trying to emulate and copy what they do. But certainly for now, this is one of those unique kind of standout products from Dyson. I think that it's a niche in the market that will want this. I don't think this is your mainstream for everybody vacuum, but there'll be some folks and scenarios where it's no doubt the perfect fit and just what they were looking for. But I would say if you're looking into this, just check your use cases, because it isn't designed for your typical carpet scenarios. It is for your sort of primarily your hard floors, and it's got a lot less power than the typical Dyson vacuum cleaner or even your normal kind of plug-in.
So it's one for the Dyson enthusiasts
Yeah, it's definitely more down that track. It's very much a premium device. There'll be a percentage of the market that that loves it, and no doubt in another few years there will be another iteration on it as well. As Dyson are quite good at iterating on their initial designs. Well, I think that's us for this episode, Bill. Really great to catch up. Thank you.
You too, Paul.
Now, folks can get to your sign up for your newsletter at billbennett.co.nz.
Yeah. And I'm there on Blue Sky if you want to find me there as well.
Yeah.
I'm actually on Mastodon as well, but Blue Sky is probably the
not Threads.
No,
because that seems to have been getting quite busy.
Well, the thing is, I think you don't want to spread yourself too thin on these things.
Yeah. The joy of social media, right? Yeah. And would encourage listeners, please jump on nztechpodcast.com/survey. Would love to hear your feedback and your thoughts, and very happy to give away some prizes. And we're really looking forward to doing that. And of course, a big thank you to our show partners. So thank you to Gorilla Technology, Workday, 2 Degrees, Spark, and 1NZ for their support of the New Zealand Tech Podcast. We'll be back again next week. We'll be delving into some interesting stuff between now and Christmas, and we also will have some listening to kind of keep you occupied over the break as well. So we've got some really interesting pre-recorded interviews that we'll be unleashing between now and early January. So thanks everyone. Appreciate you joining us here on the New Zealand Tech Podcast. Catch you next week. See ya.
The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.